We still don't have an answer on Aaron Rodgers, the guy who said he wasn't going to drag this out, who said sooner rather than later. But here we are, sitting here. I'm recording this late Sunday night to tell you we still have no word from Aaron Rodgers. So why not? And why this is starting to get problematic. Not just starting, this is now problematic for both the Jets and the Packers, who are trying to put together a game plan for this week because the legal tampering period opens in a matter of hours. All of that on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. We are waiting. We are waiting on Aaron Rodgers. And maybe by the time you're listening to this, something has happened. Honestly, that would be a little weird if you're still listening to this after something happened. Though, not really, because I wanted to try and make today, because news might break at 8 a.m. before you listen to this, I want to make the show as much as possible about how we got to this point as I am sitting here recording and fully expecting that the news is going to break late on Sunday night and I'm going to have to throw the show in the trash. But so since last week, we have conflicting reports on where this trade is. Connor Hughes, who covers the Jets, said done in principle. And they're waiting on Aaron Rodgers. Then Tom Pelissero, NFL media, they walk it back. No, it's not done. It's waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make a decision, and then they'll hammer out the details. Either way, the thing stopping this deal from being done, a Packers team that clearly wants to trade Aaron Rodgers and a Jets team that clearly wants to trade for Aaron Rodgers, they're waiting on Aaron Rodgers. Now, we actually have to take a step back because we didn't know if the Packers were a passive or an active participant in where we are right now, which is that the Jets and the Packers, regardless of the waiting part of this, are on the brink of a trade for Aaron Rodgers, assuming he wants to play football. But the fact that that's where we are. And by the way, Adam Schefter 2 weeks ago said it's looking increasingly like the Jets or retirement. Took a lot of heat for that. That looks like right now where we are. The question was, what is Green Bay's role in all of this? Is Aaron Rodgers pushing for this, or are the Packers pushing for this? Mark Murphy goes on TV and has a quote about, he's asked, could Aaron Rodgers come back? And he's like, well, yeah, if this doesn't go the way we want it to go. He says, essentially, on the record, they want to trade Aaron Rodgers. Talks about Aaron Rodgers in the past tense, bringing him back, and how a lot of teams and players do not stay together for an entire great player's career, even all-time greats. He's talking like this is done. And what this allows us to glean from that is the Packers are pushing for this. Maybe it was even their idea. We don't know, and maybe that will come out, and maybe we'll get sides and bits and pieces and drips and drabs. And this is going to be one of the all-time stories for the Now They Tell Us piece. Now they tell us. All this stuff comes out about the TikTok of the trade, and not like the app, like the thing that happens to... Never mind. the whatever was happening behind the scenes, things that might have happened over the last couple of years, has happened with Mike McCarthy. Those big stories, multiple big stories came out about like, yeah, this was bad. It had gotten to a bad place. That stuff is all going to come out too. What the Packers, what we didn't know was happening was that the Packers were engaged in this. This was not, oh, the Packers, if Aaron Rodgers says, the reporting that if he wants to come back, he can come back. They'll welcome him. Seemed to be posturing. That was negotiating through the media. That was the Packers saying, oh, no. If Rodgers wants to come back, we'll keep him. So you got to give us real stuff. I don't want to say that's all that was, but that was what that was. Okay. And then I think the wait, the deal's not done is an extension of that. It was the Packers saying, look, you don't know Aaron Rodgers like we know Aaron Rodgers. Don't leak that it's done until it's done, because you can and we can both wind up with egg on our face if you don't do this the right way. So let's wait until Aaron makes a decision fully, and then we can pull the trigger on this. Everything is agreed in principle. There's no more leverage. It's done. Maybe Rodgers comes back at the last minute and says, yeah, I really like Randall Cobb or whatever. Like, everyone is on the same page in terms of what is going to happen here. Even if it's not done, the Packers never would have let Aaron Rodgers talk to the Jets brass without having some understanding of what this compensation structure was going to look like and not believing that they were going to get something of value. We talked about why you could just wait if you wanted to. If the Jets were really playing hardball, wait and trade him into cap space in a couple months post June 1. That's not going to happen, and I don't think it was ever really on the table. But the reason that this is problematic, that we're still waiting here, and regardless of when this happens, like I could hit stop recording and the trade could be done, is that the Packers have guys that need new contracts. Guys like Allen Lazard, who Packers reportedly have interest in bringing back. Now, where Aaron Rodgers plays is according to Mike Garafolo at NFL Network, going to matter to Allen Lazard. Maybe that means he'd come back for less money if Rodgers is going to be back. Pretty low percentage chance that that's going to happen. And so maybe it means he wants to go to the Jets. The Jets happen to clear almost the exact, like almost to the 10th of the decimal point. It's 15 point. So we're talking about millions of dollars, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, but almost to the exact number, clearing the space that Rodgers would cost. The Packers have more than enough space to take the dead cap hit here, but they don't know exactly who is playing quarterback for them. Now, they know how much money they're going to have, probably, but they don't know when they're going to have it, because if Aaron Rodgers chooses to retire, that's a different number than the trade. And that matters in negotiations with someone like Keyshawn Nixon, who posted a cryptic Instagram, the two fingers up. I don't know what you could have in place, not knowing exactly what you're doing. And maybe that's why they got so far under the cap. Because, right, they could have just gotten enough to absorb the extra Aaron Rodgers stuff, and then you could figure the rest of it out. If you're going to sign somebody, you move some money, you figure it out. Well, they moved the David Bakhtiari money. They're well under. That gives them the leeway to sign some of these guys. But if you're Keyshawn Nixon, maybe you want to know who the quarterback is going to be. That just makes sense. If you're Adrian Amos, maybe you want to know who the quarterback is going to be. If you're Big Bob Tunyon, if you're Mercedes Lewis, these guys want to know who the QB is, especially in the case of the guys catching passes. It is a material difference. And the Packers are not getting the benefit of that clarity. And so either are those players. And so you have this negotiating period that you have with your own guys that you're missing out on to some degree. And maybe we'll get a deal announced, a trade deal is announced, and the Packers will announce they're waiting to have, XYZ. That's happened in the past. They're waiting for Aaron Rodgers. And so then, we get, okay, these deals were done. We're waiting on all of these restructures. Oh, and by the way, they did these 4 things too. That can happen, and you, out of respect for Aaron Rodgers, you're gonna wait until that happens to announce it. So maybe Keyshawn Nixon has a deal. Maybe Allen Lazard is coming back to Green Bay. Maybe Mercedes Lewis, maybe that stuff is already done. They just haven't announced it because they're waiting on the Aaron Rodgers piece of this. But there is a lost value in having that clarity when it comes to your own guys. And then starting at noon on Monday, the legal tampering period opens. So guys can start having conversations with teams. This already happened, by the way, starting at the combine, really. But someone could just go, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't make a decision, the Jets have players they'd like to resign. Someone could go offer them a contract and they might go, I'd rather have the certainty of this money right now. Someone might come in and offer Keyshawn Nixon the bag to be an all-pro kick returner because that's what he is. Now that is, he's shown that he is a capable nickel corner, but not a core player on this team defensively in terms of snap count, but felt like he was a core piece personality-wise, culture-wise, fit right in. The guys seemed to love him. All that stuff matters. And I know it seems like I'm making a big deal out of this, Keyshawn Nixon is the guy. He really is one of the few guys that you feel like you absolutely need to re-sign. The rest of it is more really about continuity. But you don't have that benefit, and either do the Jets and their free agents. So it's not ideal. Do I want to go so far as they're going to hold them hostage? Look, it has taken longer than anyone thought, including the Packers, by the way. And, that if you want to say, we don't know, let me say it this way. I'm trying to be very careful here. We don't know that this time frame has materially impacted the Packers' plans, that it has affected them in a negative way. And so in that way, we can't say for sure he's holding them hostage. But the waiting is inherently bad. That sort of turbulence is inherently bad for an organization, their planning, and all of that stuff. So you just would rather it be resolved. Now, why is it taking this long? I have a theory about that. I'm going to tell you about it in a second. Before I do, the midway point in the NBA season, long past. We're in the home stretch now in the NBA, so it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to threes drained. Bucks lost a tough one against the Warriors on Saturday night. Kind of choked it away at the end, but no Giannis. Or, look, we also have the NCAA tournament. Houston 5-1 to win it all. They're really, really good. Don't miss your chance at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So for Aaron Rodgers, the waiting. Why are we waiting? What are we waiting for? And, I've been trying to parse this, trying to figure it out, trying to go through scenarios where it made sense to me why we're still waiting. And I think you can just make a compelling case at its core that this is a really difficult decision. And when finally faced with an opportunity that maybe he wanted, it became harder to pull the trigger than he realized. And I'm sure all of us can relate to that in some form or another, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a positive thing. You get the job offer that you've always wanted. You're at a job and you finally get that offer. And man, it's harder to leave the situation than you realized. even if you liked it, even if you wanted to go, it could give you conflicted feelings. I think that in and of itself would be reason to be really judicious and take every moment allotted to you. This is not like, a job that you or I would get where, like, if you took a week too long to decide, you might lose out on the opportunity to get it. You're Aaron Rodgers. That's not happening. And the Jets obviously want to give up Boku bucks to get Aaron Rodgers, so it's going to be fine. But what if Aaron Rodgers never expected in his heart of hearts for Green Bay to be here? That even if they were upfront with him in their final meetings and said, look, Aaron, we think the best thing for everyone is to move on. We're really excited about Jordan Love. And that's that. Didn't even couch it. Didn't even say, but if you want to come back, we'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. We'll see if this makes sense. Remember, I've been saying this for weeks. Brian Gutekunst was not full-throated in his endorsement of Aaron Rodgers and his return. In fact, he didn't even say Rodgers' name when he was asked, do you want Aaron Rodgers back? He said, we want all of our guys back. Did not even say, but we know what kind of player we have in Aaron Rodgers. It was, if anyone's watching Poker Face, the main character, the Natasha Lyonne character, she can tell when someone's lying. And it was just like one of those moments where you're just like, okay, that's what you say to avoid lying. We know what kind of player Aaron Rodgers is. Okay. But he never did it. So regardless of what they said, let's just assume, for the sake of this theory, that they said, look, we'd like to move on, but we'll facilitate a trade if that's what you want. If you want to retire, we will, hang the banners and blow our trumpets for your retirement as well. And Rodgers goes on his darkness retreat. It's why we continued to get there has to be mutual interest, even though, we were getting the half-hearted, sure we want. And Brian Gutekunst, by the way, through the course of the season, kept saying Aaron Rodgers is our quarterback. He made a commitment, all that stuff. It may just be the case that Brian Gutekunst saying we thought a 2-year commitment, or we thought when we signed that contract, it was a multi-year commitment. And we're getting mixed signals from Aaron Rodgers about him playing. And maybe that was just like a low-key little shade that he was throwing. But they have the conversation. Rodgers goes on his darkness retreat, comes back, and tells the Packers, look, I know that you may want to do a Jordan Love thing. Do it in a year. He's under contract. Pick up his 5th-year option. Let's just try and do this one more time. And Rodgers believed they would say okay. And they didn't. What if that happened? Because remember in the start of the show, we talked about we didn't really know the degree to which the Packers were active participants in what is going on. It would have been easy to say, yeah, Rodgers said they want out because the Packers, the reporting was if Rodgers wanted to come back, they would welcome him back. I'm not sure that was ever quite as set in stone as some of the reporting made it seem. But I think certainly the Packers wanted people to think that. I certainly believe that. If it is the case that Rodgers never truly believed the Packers were going to move on, because when he went to them in 2021 and said, if you want to trade me, and they didn't. And then last offseason, they gave him the extension. I think it's possible. I don't know that this is exactly what happened or, anything like that. I'm just saying this is a totally plausible, reasonable explanation to me that he didn't ever really think the Packers would say thanks, but no thanks. Aaron Rodgers didn't think the Packers would do to him what they did to Brett Favre when Brett Favre said, I'm retiring, and he came back and they said, thanks, but no thanks. He never thought the Packers would do that to him. And That seems not only plausible, but likely. Now, whether or not that's the reason that this is taking so long, I don't know. But that would be a pretty good reason that it didn't really occur to him that he would be in this position. And so then he has to weigh, how much does that sting? Do I just want to retire? Would it just be better if I retire? Do I really want to go and try and do a whole new thing somewhere else? Or do I want to go to Green Bay or go to New York, get the money, fully guaranteed $60 million? Probably want that. Do I want to stick it to Green Bay the way that Brett Favre tried to stick it to Green Bay for saying thanks but no thanks? I don't know. Seems pretty plausible to me. And when you put all the pieces together, I think you can make a really good argument that that is what's going on here. And I will stop couching. I will go so far as to say I think that is what is happening. That Rodgers knew that the Packers were probably at best wishy-washy about bringing him back. At worst, flat out said, this is the direction we would like to go. You decide if you want to be a part of it. Like, that would be the nicest way it could have happened, I think. But they said, no, Jordan Love, that's our guy. And Rodgers decided, I think if I go back and say, look, I really think we should just do this one more year. Let's try. That they would say yes. And they didn't. That is my theory. That is what I think is going on right now and why this is taking extra time, because this caught Rodgers off guard. This was not part of his plan. And so now he really does have to figure out what comes next. Today's episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app, and if you've ever thought you'd make a good GM, you want to switch places with Brian Gutekunst right now, then you've got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you think to create a dynasty. You want to ask Brian Gutekunst about that one? When you play the Ultimate Football GM, you get total control and you manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play your way through seasons, lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of the season. This is not your straightforward, everyday, run-of-the-mill football game. It is complete control of every aspect. And Locked On Packers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On in the game store. That's Locked On. To make sure you check it out today, to download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez provide in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects with deep dives into the sleepers and hidden gems that can change your favorite NFL franchise. Find Locked On NFL Draft wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Mock Draft Monday, but it seems silly that we are this close now to knowing what the trade compensation is to do a mock draft when we could find out at literally any minute that we know what the Packers are going to get in an Aaron Rodgers trade, or he's retiring, which also I think changes some of the pieces here. I don't think he's retiring. I think this trade is happening tonight as I record this, or last night as you're listening to this maybe, or today, Monday, as you're listening to this. But still send me your mock drafts. Send them to me. Send me what trades you think are fair. Send them at Locked On Packers. Send them to me on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski. I want to see them. And we're going to have a ton of time to talk about them a lot. Free agency is going to change some of this stuff. It's going to change what is happening above them. And the Bears made a monster trade. They traded out of the first overall pick. They're going to 9. The Panthers going up. They're probably taking CJ Stroud. They traded DJ Moore to the Bears. The Bears are now going to be in a position to take an offensive lineman that maybe Carolina wouldn't have taken. And maybe now that they're not taking a defensive player, they're more likely to take. That affects the player pool that could be available to the Packers at both 13, if that's a pick that they get, and 15, if that's a pick that they're going to make in that spot. Maybe they take 13 and 15 and move up. That's a scenario we're going to talk about if and when that trade happens. So there's still so much to talk about, so much to do here, and so little time in which to do it. So just like, let's keep doing this. Let's keep having fun. This is going to be a crazy, insane, bonkers week, and I'm ready for it. I am ready for it. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come and hang out with us live, like when Aaron Rodgers removes us from our darkness, you can do that on our Locked On Packers YouTube page so you can stay Locked On Packers.